Cody, have you got a couple things that you can do for us?
Maybe.
You can give a thought or an invocation and then the pledge of allegiance. If you
Sure.
did you see that you were on the agenda?
No, you know what? When did that come up? That. Here I am ready. Yeah. What do we do first?
Probably the thought or invocation. Is that the way it goes?
Either way.
Either way.
All right, perfect. I can do that.
Okay.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to get to be together tonight in Economic Development Committee for North Hardin City. We're grateful for the city and for what it is. We ask you to help us to be directed to bless it and to make it better and to do what we can to further the cause. Again, ask for thy spirit. See these things in Jesus Christ. Amen. Let's please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I should have said something earlier.
No, that's
Okay, so the first thing we need to do, looks like, is any on the discussion on the prior minutes. I can't imagine there's anything, but if there is, for September, we'll just put them in the same boat, September 21st and October 19th. Are there any additions or corrections from anyone?
I did not see anything that needed to be corrected.
Okay. So could I have, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept. I
Okay.
second that.
Okay. Been motion been made to accept and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I don't know if we're gonna have a real long meeting tonight. I'm not in the real long meeting, but we'll do what we need, we'll cover what we need to cover. We've just got a couple changes. Before we had two different council members, Blake Severing and Ryan Barker, that kind of oversaw what was going on. And with duties being changed around with the change in council, we've got JD now, JD Dalpass, that will be helping us be the liaison with the city council. So appreciate that, JD. And other than that, we're pretty much the same. I moved also on the agenda, you'll see in the future. Public comments is just going to be one time. We don't have a lot of public usually come to this meeting. So it'll be at the end of the meeting rather than the first. I can't imagine anybody's going to come here with comments. That's not like the city council or the planning commission typically. So if that's okay with everybody, that I decided that might work out best for us. So the fourth thing on is Scott Hess in attendance.
Yes.
Hi, Scott.
Hello, how are you?
Good. So I've asked Scott to present one of the things that we may have access to, and that was the question is grant money, whether federal, state, or countywide. And so I was talking to Scott about that. He's the new planning director who took over earlier this year.
Mhm.
Or last year anyway.
This year, yeah. Oh, yeah. Last year.
We're a year away. So Scott, would you mind telling us what you know and found out and what might be beneficial to us?
Yeah, so we had a brief conversation before this meeting talking about some potential grant funds. Two opportunities that I've applied for, we'll find out about in April, are through the Wasatch Front Regional Council, their Transportation and Land Use Connection Program. And the first one is related to the intersection of 2000 North and Washington Boulevard at the Cannery and the Kurtz Drive-In area. So that represents a really good redevelopment area for the city with some local businesses in there that the city or the planning department certainly is interested in figuring out how we keep those businesses and help them expand and thrive but also look at how to reinvest in those locations. You've got some some older buildings, aging infrastructure, and I applied for a centers plan. So that would be like a small area plan or kind of a really focused version of a general plan in that area that would be potentially supported by a market study to understand the number of rooftops we would need in order to get the kind of economic outcomes that we desire. So that's an exciting one. And then another was an active transportation project. It's a comprehensive trail and wayfinding signage plan. So the city has an excellent network of existing and planned trails, but they're disconnected, or you don't maybe necessarily relate one section of that trail to another, how closely it connects to parks and schools and other infrastructure for the city. So a comprehensive wayfinding plan would assist our parks and rec department and public works departments with installing signage that was branded, that worked together, whether you're on an on-street connection, a widened sidewalk, or a section of our canal trail, for instance, and how those relate to the mountain trail. So that might seem a little bit kind of sidelined economic development, but the reality is that North Ogden, I think for many residents of this region, especially sort of western and immediately southern, those communities, we're a destination community for those people who come up and use the mountain access that North Ogden enjoys. So to make that as easy as possible, I think would help encourage people. It would bring additional folks here to come and spend money in our restaurants and stay and spend the day using the trail system. So there's those two things. And then we also had a conversation about other potential for federal grants. In a former career working for Wasatch Front Regional Council, I worked with the Economic Development Administration, and there are infrastructure grants, innovation grants, those sorts of things that are available through EDA funding. But as I've looked through those, we really don't compete very well. So our city is essentially, we're in too good of a position financially, and I mean the city itself as well as our residents. We don't have a whole lot of underserved residents in North Ogden, which is obviously a benefit, but it also makes us slightly less eligible for some of those federal grant programs that are out there that exist really to serve underserved businesses, underserved residents, or bring back areas of blight. And really northern Utah as a whole doesn't compete very well when you start to compare it to Rust Belt communities of the Midwest on national grant that we can apply for. But it's something I'm going to continue to look into, see if we can find something. If this committee wanted to look at any sort of innovation, or we have examples across Weber County and across the Wasatch Front of maybe aerospace focused industries. When you find a targeted industry like that, it's easier to secure some of those EDA funds. I know that Roy City has worked on that, especially with the Boeing project and things happening over by Hill Air Force Base. So would just be interested in finding out from this committee what your goals and interests are and the direction you want to go. And I'm happy to, go out and try to drum up grant funds to make those things a reality. So maybe that's, more or less brief or longer, Terry, than you may have wanted. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and really excited to be a part of the committee. I think my role will be kind of as staff to the committee as the planning director, and economic development is really, squarely rooted within planning and looking into the future. So just really excited and happy to continue to be a part of the committee and work with you all.
Perfect. What I failed to mention, sorry, Scott, that I have asked Scott to join us as part of our committee, and he was more than happy to do that. And it's going to be nice to have him there. Any of you have any questions or comments for Scott? Yes, Jay.
Scott, I have a question. What does EDA stand for?
It's the Federal Economic Development Administration. So they administer federal funds through block grants, similar to like a community development block grant, but that are geared specifically to creating jobs. So they were one of the main funding agencies that got the COVID relief monies out, when those were fast tracked, the federal government already had a platform to do that. So all of those business retention grants and paycheck programs, that sort of thing, many of those were administered through Economic Development Administration. And we have a regional contact in Denver who is our go-between if we were to, as a local community, apply for those funds. And then we would compete kind of sub-regionally in the United States.
Thank you.
Hey, Terry, this is Brian Crowell.
Yes,
I'm
Brian,
on
how are
Zoom.
you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I really like the trail network concept based on the discussion we had last meeting, which was centered around branding for the community of North Ogden. And there was a lot of discussion on, recreation and the trail networks actually being a centerpiece for that branding to draw people into our community. And so, I think that's a nice fit as the city council and the mayor talk about potential branding and branding concepts that would dovetail with specific goals related to economic development. So that seemed like it was a natural fit to the discussion we had last meeting.
Hey, Brian, just an update. We have applied for 2 ramp grants, with our top priority being enhancing the trailhead, starting up here on 2750. And the Arts Guild chairman and co-chair people are planning a mountain bike race.
Okay.
For that, set for that yet, John?
No.
But I think that would tie into this economic development. How do we get people here? And then how do we introduce them to our city, the different businesses we have? But there's 2 major things they're looking at doing this year. One is the utilization of our trails, which the city council has just agreed to set aside some money to enhance. And then there's another one that's called, I think, North Ogden's Got Talent that they're going to do. So any way you guys feel like you can tie into that, those 2 events, particularly the mountain bike race. Mountain bike racing is really big time these days, and
Yeah.
it'll emphasize our trails that we have in the city, mountain trails.
Yeah, might be nice if with that race we reach out to business owners and see if they want to have some sponsorship for the race, or even we promote that, hey, we're going to allow you to advertise related to this race as part of being a member of our city or something, maybe to get them connected into what we're doing to improve their business opportunities and give them some exposure or something, maybe.
Good idea.
I know there's several citizens who have food trucks in North Ogden. What about allowing them to be up there to help, service that? That sells right into the city from there.
Sure.
Yeah, those are the kind of things I think to give people here, introduce them to our city while they're here. And Dave, I was going to mention, you still own the building down there in the plaza? 2 of them. And I mentioned to Terry that we've got to get our plan designed here fairly shortly with the RDA funds that we have. That's been one of the areas that's been talked about, but I challenged Terry to have this committee kind of give input on the best use of those funds. So.
Scott, I was gonna make one, ask you a question about, and I'm gonna refer to the 2000 North 400 East area as North Ogden Plaza. Is that fair, Mayor?
To what?
Is it North Ogden Plaza? Is it, John?
Yeah.
Okay. What do we need to do to apply for, is it the EDA funds that we use for new business there? We've also got RDA for for fixing up some of the other stuff. Do we first need a plan idea before we'll probably do before we do anything?
Yeah, I think, and John can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that some eligible activities have already been identified in the RDA funds that could assist with some basic infrastructure improvements, like maybe the sidewalk widening. I can't picture in my head right now whether or not the power is underground in that spot or not, but that's a big hurdle oftentimes during redevelopment. I will explore whether there's an EDA option specifically for that one, but RDA funds or other things that the city could do would be maybe like a special improvement district for some section of Washington Boulevard to include that if we had really particular ideas about what the outcome is. But I think a large part what the city can do is create policy that would permit redevelopment kind of in line with what we want to see. And that's that could be either rezoning the property or providing incentives for rezoning based on projects that come in that really meet our needs. But I want to be sensitive to the existing property owners and business owners there because, you know, the intention isn't to just get new shiny development there, but rather to try to pivot, you know, some of those locally grown, really good existing businesses into just a newer, a more modern building or something where it's maybe mixed use supported by housing on that same location and just better utilize really a key intersection of the city.
Hey, Scott,
Yeah.
didn't you apply for a grant to help us get a plan to look at that location?
Yep. So that was that first Wasatch Trent Regional Council grant. And we'll find out whether or not we were funded on that in April, and then the funds would be available July 1. And the way that program works is you use those dollars to secure a consultant that comes in and helps you do that planning effort. And we would select a group of folks to be a steering committee typically for that consultant work. I think, you know, I would make the recommendation that some of the people on this economic development committee maybe help us out with that. And then we work that plan through its progress through whatever the full process that we end up with there.
That's what I was trying to mention, Terry, is we are looking at trying to get a plan, see what options there are down there.
Good.
We're waiting to see if we get this grant.
Okay. Scott, thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks all.
Any other discussion on this grant business? Yes.
I was very interested in what Brian was saying about sponsorships and helping our businesses in North Ogden be a part of that bike race and or this North Ogden's Got Talent event that will be coming up this year. I like the idea of either allowing all businesses in North Ogden to be able to advertise for free or at a highly discounted amount for what other people are paying to be sponsors. I just think that would be great for us to put a priority on our North Ogden businesses so they can advertise with that. That'd be really cool. You know, maybe it's with shirts that are given to the race participants and their logos on there. And I don't know much about bike racing, but I can imagine there's a lot that goes into it that they could get their logo all over things.
Do you know much about this bike racing thing, John?
Yeah, so
How many people do they think will be, how many bicyclists?
I think their goal was 150, if I remember the meeting right, as actual participants, and then there'd be quite a few more,
If you
just,
multiply that times 4 or 5 for family and
yeah,
stuff, now we're
vendors
talking
and, yeah.
750, 1,000 people maybe. And where, do we know where that's gonna start from?
They liked the idea of the 2,700 or 2,750 trailhead.
Okay.
So that area of the city and go up to the Bonneville Shoreline Trail and then have some sort of a route and then back down. And that's, we'd actually recommended Scott Hess as a resource to them because he does a lot of biking. And he might be able to help them kind of plan out their routes and things like that.
And I can use that because when I was a teenager, I used to have a bike. That's about all I'm good for anymore. So on these food trucks things, and of course we were involved last couple of years at the park. do we get a percentage, anything for inviting food trucks? Or I forget how that works.
So we don't charge them, but we do get, if they're doing their, well, they're supposed to do their sales tax stuff correctly, and they sales tax goes to where they're selling the food, not where their business is located.
Okay,
So when they're in the park, we're collecting sales tax.
and it's gonna start at 2750, is that where it's gonna end as well? As it go up, as a loop up in the mountains, or are they gonna end up someplace else?
I believe it was planned to loop and come back, or they might even just do some downhill, courses, or I think the options are pretty, they have quite a few up there. I don't know, they've talked about partnering with the neighboring landowners, but the halls have some property there that might be able to be utilized too. And I think there's a lot of resources in that area. They're just at the very beginning of the process.
Okay.
Interesting to note that Weber High School has the largest mountain bike team in the country, I think, or something like that. There's more mountain bikers than any other organized sport in the high schools now. And we could potentially partner with some of them. They'd bring out a lot of folks probably, but it's quite a popular thing.
Hey,
I had an idea as far as, this is Janice. I had an idea about the advertising and the sponsorships. I think it'd be good to offer sponsorships to maybe all the businesses on a level. And then if they want to buy into it more, because usually you've got different levels of sponsorship so that you don't give everybody all the same. And that way you're going to incentivize ones that want to give a little bit more. You could even have like a backdrop, like a photo op place with the businesses all showing their logos, or if it's an out and back race. So that when they get back there and they want to take pictures and stuff, then if the businesses want to pay more, they could have a banner there, or they could have their business logo on the backdrop. Or because people don't usually get that much money out of having their picture on the back of a t-shirt or their name on the back of a t-shirt. It's a good thing. I mean, I shouldn't say that because I sell t-shirts, but it's still, there's other ways that you could give them more benefit.
Well, and part of our goal would be to get people who want to come back to North Ogden.
Mhm.
So if we can find something that's gonna entice them, I mean, I don't just throw this out, we got stump water, that's famous. When we can get it up there to where the race is, and glasses of water, or something along that line.
They could get ice cream or something from the local shop there, or a couple different, they could provide something. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind putting together a subcommittee of 2 or 3 to kind of look into this deal of these different things we've talked about. Is there any volunteers that would like to do that?
So would that be in combination with the committee that's looking at doing the mountain bike, sponsoring the mountain bike race? I can't remember
Yes.
which committee that was.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to support that.
okay.
I would if you need
And
some more.
Cody said he'd like that. Pardon?
I'd volunteer if you need some more.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. And I'll get back with you on that and see if we can get a couple of things going on that. Thank you so much. Is there any more discussion that we have on having to do with the grants and those things? Okay. I want to go on to some of the past items. Let's see, Brandon,
Yes.
you came in, perfect. And I'm sorry, we should have made more of a deal. All the meetings started at 6 this year. And when I sent out the agenda, I made sure it was on there, but a lot of stuff wasn't read, so you're not gonna be marked.
It was 6:30.
You won't be marked wrong or anything like that.
Grounding? Yeah.
Well, what
We'll
I'm
give
gonna do
them a
is,
pass. We'll give them a
I'm
pass.
okay with punishment. I believe in consequences. I
next,
totally missed that.
next meeting, he's gonna be in charge of the presentation.
Okay.
We'll do that. How's that? So I'm going over a couple things here that I've written down. In the last year, has there been talk about spotlighting businesses? And what's been talked about, and can you fill us in a little bit on that?
The latest that we had on that, and Blake Severing was helping with this, is first of all, and this is since you left, so it's just giving you an update. He created a Facebook page that's a Spend It in North Ogden Facebook page. It doesn't have a lot of likes or follows yet, but we'll have a goal of expanding that and getting it more visibility. And I would invite everyone on the committee, if you're on Facebook, to search up Spend It in North Ogden and share it with your friends that are in North Ogden or close by. So
Say
that's
the name of that again.
Spend It in North Ogden.
That's the name of the Facebook page?
Yes.
And I'm not really good on social media, so
Yeah.
I'll have my wife show me.
Yeah.
I'll have Dave show me. No, that won't work. That's like Dumb and Dumber, right?
So that's one thing that we started on. And another thing that we talked about pretty far in depth was to try to get some videos going that help spotlight our businesses. So Blake was saying in the last few times that he has a video guy that we might be able to work with to do, say any business in North Ogden could come apply to us and say, hey, we'd like to be spotlighted. We have to determine what that would look like and how we would select those. But the idea was we have a small budget that we're requesting from the city council each year. And those videos could be part of that budget. So that's a little bit of what we've talked about. It hasn't gone much further than that, but I'm glad to work with Blake or do whatever we need to move that to the next level.
If you take that, would you please do that, DD, and talk to him more about the videos? It's not Ray Buller, is it?
I don't know who his guy is.
Jason,
Pardon?
Jason.
Okay. So I can talk to him and get some more
Okay.
information and see what it would take. But the initial conversations that we've had is we just, I can't remember what exactly the number was, but we had a number that we wanted to bring to the city council for a yearly annual budget. And those videos would be part of that annual budget, along with potentially a little bit of money to replace the banners as they get damaged along Washington, the Spend It in North Ogden banners. So there's going to be this annual budget, the videos and the banners and some certain things come from, but it's not going to be this large, huge budget that we're working with each year for now until we get going.
So no more than probably like 75,000 a year.
Yeah, so, yeah, less than that.
Okay. Now, Brandon, did you put together a deal on getting listed businesses? Was I told that, or?
No, so what I did was looking at similar cities
Okay.
and what they had collected for property tax versus what they had
Okay.
collected for sales tax.
And I'm not trying to take away your thunder next time when we have an original, actual presentation from you. But
Yeah, well, and I mean, we presented, so I guess I would want to know kind of what the new angle is that we're kind of looking at. And I think it was a super cool discussion, and where it eventually went is like, what are we trying to accomplish, right? Like, what is our goals as a committee? And I've since had an awesome conversation with John, right? Like, just trying to figure out what it is that we're trying to accomplish, and then use all of our resources, including some of that budget, right? Like to move us forward and accomplish that for the city. And we talked with the mayor, and I know he presented just recently on kind of the list of priorities that they have as a city. So, don't go out into the world and get more sales tax just to get more sales tax, but get sales tax in order to accomplish these 5 top priorities of the city. And then we can turn and branding is a bigger conversation, but we can communicate with our citizens why it's important to do these things or why it's important to spend in North Ogden, because this is what we're gonna get out of it. It's not just because we want to be rich, right? Like it's because we want a new park or the other priorities that the city has. And so, and then using all of our efforts in one direction to kind of focus that to do something good.
Okay. So do we have, John, anything that's easy to grab for a list of all the businesses in North Ogden, retail businesses?
We do, we have our business license list.
I don't remember seeing anything in the North Ogden Connection. There's never any on that I mean, we used to highlight a business once in a while. Seems like we did the cherry on top thing.
Mhm.
Are we still doing that? I don't remember seeing.
The magazine personnel have taken it over and they've been working with Katie, but they do it. And sometimes it's a business, sometimes it's an individual.
Okay. Because to make it simple, what I think our job is it's a two-prong. First of all, make sure the businesses that are existing here are being utilized and that the people inside North Ogden know. And maybe, and we probably ought to have a list, because I think some people in North Ogden, especially a lot of the new people that moved in on the bench up there may be a lot of them that don't even know what we have available. Just to spend time in economic development, I mean, a lot of it has to do with bringing in new business, but we've got to spend at least as much time and effort, I think, on utilizing the business we have. After all, they're the ones that are already here. They've already bit the bullet and come here, and we need to now help support them. And we talked about that about a year ago, and I talked with Phil that owns Ace Hardware, and he saw a little bit of a difference in people coming through his doors when we started letting everybody know, yeah, we've got a Home Depot down the street, and yeah, there's a Lowe's, but how about if we go here and try it? And personally, I was always a Home Depot guy. And so I started everything I needed. I started going into Ace, and you know what? They had it. And I was so surprised. And one of the things, I was in town one day, went into both Lowe's and Home Depot and couldn't find it. Went into Ace, they had it. And it was a particular kind of extension cord. So I think I'm not the only one that probably found out, hey, we've got some pretty good stuff right here. And we need to try to support, not only for sales tax use, but we need to support these people that have put their life into this business that they've got here. So the RDA money for guys like Dave that own those buildings. And especially if we can draw something new down at the plaza, we're going to need to do some redevelopment on the stuff that's there, because we need to add some sparkle. And I keep thinking this through my mind. It's one of those deals where, okay, we put pressure on the business owners that own those buildings down there. And I don't think you'd disagree that some of them need to be refreshed a little bit, but to do that takes money. And the only way you get your money back is by probably raising rent. And by raising rent, some of the people that work are taking those places and go, well, I can't afford. So it's this ugly thing that happens. Yes.
And to continue that a little further, because we've had this discussion years ago, and I presented it to Janice. I said, okay, Janice, I spend $200,000 to do new facades on the building, and the city's going to help with either a low cost or 0% loan for whatever length of time, but I still got to make those payments. Now, to make those payments, I've got to raise your rent. Let's say I raise your rent 50%. Will you be able to stay? And the answer comes back is, if my business improves
That's better.
substantially, then yes, I can pay a higher rent. But if I can't, I'll have to leave. So then where does it leave me as a building owner with an empty space or two empty spaces? But I still have my payments that to either the city or to somebody for that facade that I put up or for the improvements that I made, but I now have empty spaces that I can't fill. So
Yeah.
what comes first?
And that's what I was thinking the other day, because I was talking to Mark Miller that owns that lighting store in that deal. And that piece of ground is on the market. And it looks like somebody wants to buy it from Pocatello or something. And the first thing he wants to do is,
They're gonna close on it here pretty quick if they get older.
and what first thing he's gonna do just because of what he's paying for it is double the rent. Well, they're not, that's gonna be a tough one. So this isn't just a simple thing, oh, let's just do this.
Oh.
There's a whole bunch of hard stuff to it. So I see the RDA money. We're gonna need that, but this is gonna be a two-pronged thing. We're gonna have to bring some new business into that square if we can. And that's where I'm gonna be going next, is trying to work on that. I'm gonna start working with some developers and see if we can get something in there on that. Yes, sir.
Well, and another thing that makes it even more tricky down there, because years ago, there was talk of finding a developer that would maybe do the whole thing, tear some buildings down, do whatever, but you've got 8 distinct pieces of property, and you've got 6 owners. And I've talked to Norm George about this at pretty great length, so George, what's it gonna take? You guys know Norm, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What's it gonna take to kind of get things rolling here? And he said, Dave, the biggest problem you've got is you got 6 owners. And you got 8 pieces of property. Okay, Katrubis owns 2, I own 2, and then there's all the others. Getting everybody together to agree to do something that's gonna cost a lot of money. It's pretty tough. It isn't just one owner on 10 acres that you can say, hey, here's what you wanna do, dude. Sounds good to me, let's do it. No, you've got 6 owners with all different ideas, different agendas.
Now, I suppose you have a little,
There is a property owners association, North Ogden Plaza Association.
we need to find who the president of that association is.
You know, as it turns out,
Okay,
as it turns out, and I have been since 1997, when I got volunteered in. And you know why I'm still there? Because nobody else will do it. And all it really is taking care of snow plowing, lawn mowing, the sprinkler systems out front, which has been a problem, which I won't go into with this, but I'd like to go into it sometime. Stuff like that. It's not been anything major. And the ownership has changed over so many different years, selling out. I'm like one of the last of the Mohicans, and I'm the guy that lives in North Ogden. So I'm right 5 minutes away.
okay, so I'm gonna make a subcommittee, and it's gonna be with you and I, and we're gonna figure this deal out. Because this is a big deal, but we're gonna get the mayor to help us,
Okay.
because he's retired now and he's got a lot of time on his hands, he said.
But he does.
Yeah.
Terry, can I just make a suggestion though?
You bet.
I think maybe one step back, because I think if we're gonna really do this, if we're gonna market the city, if we're gonna pick something, whether it's trails, mountains, whatever it is, it would seem the growth of these businesses that we ought to figure out how to try to tie those in somehow.
Well, and that was my segue. I was saying we need to spend time helping the existing businesses, and that's an example. If we're gonna do something there, we need to make sure we're involving those businesses somehow.
Yeah, but
too.
we ought to decide on what like Brian Krause said, what are we gonna market ourselves as?
We're gonna have to think about that for a minute, huh?
Because that's when you can tie the businesses into it, to support the marketing plan, whatever that is.
Everybody be thinking about that. Yes, JD.
So I just want to ask, maybe Scott or John would know this. One of the challenges that's been mentioned here is if we try to redevelop the North Ogden Plaza, it's going to cost a lot of money. It's potential rent increases to those businesses, so it'd be a big deal for them. Is there a way to utilize RDA funds to offset the impact to those businesses, for example? So John and Scott, that would be my question. Are there any creative ways to use RDA funds to help the businesses that would be impacted by any big changes to make sure that they're able to afford it or get through it?
Yes, the RDA, the redevelopment area is much more open as far as what we can use the money for. And so there is the option to kind of work it into a way that encourages the existing businesses to stay and thrive. So, yeah.
Okay.
Here's the alternative, I think, and it is circular, there's no doubt about it. But if people don't invest in their business, eventually they're out of business because that plaza gets so run down that nobody wants to get there. Now, if you do things right and you look at it, you're only going to make an investment if you think you can increase the volume and the sales, which generally happens. I can tell you every time we remodeled a grocery store, sales went up 20 to 25%, just refreshing the grocery store. Now, I'm not saying that applies to everything, but at some point in time, if you defer things so long, then it's almost, you can't recover. So we ought to be able to be smart enough to figure out a way to make this happen. I've seen a lot of businesses who don't reinvest in their business eventually go out. So I think there's a way we can figure this out, just my take.
Mayor, can you, what I was saying about RDA to offset the impact of businesses, can you weigh in on that? Do you have an opinion? But I'd be very interested to hear if you have an opinion on if that seems somewhat doable or if that seems like a monumental task. What are your thoughts?
I think it's possible because I think that's how cities for many years got businesses to come, right? They incentivized them somehow, different ways, but I'm sensing there's a way to do it. Don't know how the answer at the tip of my fingers, but I believe there's a way to do it. I think that's what RDA is about, right? It's increasing business. That's why we have the money.
Yeah.
And improving helping improve. So how much money are we talking about that has been generated by that RDA?
I think we're projecting by the end of the thing about 2.4 million, John?
I think it's 2.4.
2.4 million would be available. And, you know, some of the previous city councils felt like that was being set aside to renovate the aquatic center. So there's
A lot of people
competition.
want that money.
Yeah, there's competition for the money, but our job is to utilize it in the best way possible to grow economic development in the city. So that's
that-
part of the analysis that we'll be doing when recommendations come in is, what's going to accomplish the ultimate purpose. But I'm sensing there's a way. I know some of our previous mayors were totally against incentivizing businesses, weren't they, John?
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Okay.
But, I think John would know more about this, but for instance, could we set aside the North Ogden portion of property taxes for a period of time based upon growth, because ultimately you give up some now for more later, right? So are there some things along those lines that we could do to incentivize? We used some RDA funds on that Smith's strip mall, didn't we, John?
Yes, or was that CDA funds?
Well, we used, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's been pretty successful, I believe.
Yeah, but exactly what Terry mentioned that we talked about is most of the local tenants have moved, and now we have a lot of national tenants. Like Game Grid moved across the street to the clock tower building. So
You have to find that balance.
because we didn't do that in that situation. It was just here's the cash to make it look better. And it looks better, and we've actually generated more sales tax, property tax from it because of that, but there's been an impact to the local business owners.
I have a suggestion.
Okay.
I talked to JD about it and to Dave. And I think in our portion, or the portion that I'm in North Ogden Plaza, the strip mall that's on the south end of it, if we had a back room instead of a fire lane behind our business, that would improve our businesses. And that's considering that or all redoing the whole face of everything. You could do some simple remodel of like the poles, the pillar kind of things that are angled out in front. Those could have some, new face put on those with some rock or something. But if they could get rid of the fire lane that's right there on a road and let us have an extra 10 feet on the back of our businesses, I think that would improve the businesses right there. That would help all of us that are in there because we don't have a back room. We have 5 feet along the back of our building, along the back of each of our spots. But we have a fire lane that's huge, that's of no use. So that would, if we can come up with creative things like that instead of, and that would help the ones that are there. Plus, if somebody else came in, it would be a better moneymaker. You could charge more rent for it because you've got more space. And it would be more beneficial to the people that want to rent there.
That's a good suggestion, Denise. I'm gonna look into that too. Huh. Yes, Dave.
Jerry, you may run into current setbacks from the street. Because when I put the corner building where the CrossFit is now, that's what I ran into in positioning that building with setbacks, this and that. And so we'd have to look and see exactly where the property line is on 1900 North and how far, what the requirements are for building setback off the road. We may run into problems there, at least on the one corner, because it kind of narrows down towards the west and opens up towards the east. Because the road curves, but the building was put in straight.
So
I
is
know what she's saying, but.
the fire lane she's talking about, that's outside the building between the
Yeah,
sidewalk?
what it is there's quite a bit of space between the south side of the building and 1900.
Okay,
There's more space on the east end than there
in the
is
west.
the west end, just because of the way 1900 has a slight curve. So it obviously leaves more space as it curves away. But I don't know what the legal setbacks are.
So have you thought about this before, Dave, of what she's talking
Janice
about?
has talked about it before because I think she'd like more more space. The building is about 32 feet deep, all the way up and down. And I know she would like more space. And the only way to add space is probably on the back of the building, the south side.
So are we right here?
Yeah. So on this end, again, I don't know how much legal setback you have to have here, but it obviously opens up as the road curves.
There's a lot more. So is this just grass now?
No, just blacktop.
Blacktop.
There's grass here, and originally this building, back in 95, because of looking into the plaza, I asked them to let me move it to be in line right here. Well, the city council or the planning commission said, no, this is where it's gotta be. And later on, the building inspector came to me a few years later and said, I don't know why they didn't let you do that. They should have. Just for aesthetics. But I think there are some problems there could be a problem with setback here being too close to the road.
Can you check that on that, John?
Mhm.
So would you, as the owner, if we could, would you build more building on there if you could raise your rent because of it?
Well, sure. I mean, it's like anything else, if it makes sense financially, why wouldn't you?
Well, that's something. And it's,
And that's
I don't
assuming
mean
you're
it-
down the line.
we're not trying to give preferential treatment because you're on the EDC, but I'm glad you're here, Dave, because you do speak for a lot of the other tenants on different things. So is this just a parking area here?
It's just right, there is a driveway that comes in
Right here?
right here, and this is just empty space. This used to be King's, and this is now a fenced lot for standard plumbing. And then there's just a drive, you can drive through here and access everything else. And there's a drive through here.
I'll look at that a little bit after the meeting and see if there's some changes we can.
Do you want to the east?
Just the two pieces.
So I mean, could you build out east and have the driveway go even farther around the building to come back in?
I understand.
Okay, so you're talking about building south. What about east of the building? You said that's just parking lot.
Well, the problem that you run into going east.
Yeah, right there.
Is you can't really see it here, but there are 8 distinct sets of property lines.
Okay, so they're.
And they were originally set up, as I understand it, this is back in, I think, 80 something. Everybody got together and to
There's the
guarantee
property lines
access,
now.
okay,
Yeah,
to guarantee access to the road so that one owner couldn't landlock somebody else.
right.
You can see that the property lines are pretty odd. This is standard plumbing, but he comes down here and then he has just a little tiny space here and then, so you can see, and even this one, this building here, property lines probably, I think it's a little further out, but it's close to there, comes this way, and then ends up at a driveway here.
Okay.
So it's, all the lot lines are odd.
So John, is that typical for like standard to have that building clear back there and then on all the way to the street because they have to own their own drive?
It's not standard, but they did, there's a cross-access easement that was granted by all the property owners. Usually what they'll do is more like what you'll see up here in the Smiths area. Where even though technically Smith has access down here onto Washington, there would just be cross-access easements between all these that
Okay, I
just say,
got you.
hey, we have access, and for city purposes, that's sufficient for legal access to the properties.
Scroll over to the lease, which used to be the acres. Because I know the city, okay, yeah, it's the driveway that comes back in behind Lee's. Okay, thank you.
But so commercial properties typically have weirder property lines, but they do often have situations, I think down, I want to say here, they were looking at condoizing these units. And so that would just be little boxes here and then a common space that was shared by the commercial condo association.
What about, how far north is that?
That's straight across from North Ogden Plaza.
Okay, so as you look at that whole lot at the North Ogden Plaza, so if we got let's say a Texas Roadhouse, just to look at this, how do we get property to sell to them? Because they're all individual, that's all, every bit of that lot's owned, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. The only thing that's empty, there isn't that empty lot that's, I think, 2.5 or acre and a half, that's right here. And that's Katruba's have, that's the empty lot. Let's see, there you've got Pizza Man, the lighting store, and then this is a big empty. That's the only thing that's empty, everything else has got something on it. Picture, but standard plumbing's right there.
Okay.
And
'Cause I
again,
got-
the problem is, it'd be great if Texas Roadhouse said, hey, we want 10 acres. We need 10 acres because this is 10.27 acres. The problem is, if he sells and he sells, he doesn't want to sell, he doesn't want to sell, they'll sell, I don't want to sell, but I'll sell this one. Then you get into, everybody's got to
It's a
sell.
mess. We
And
just,
everybody's got to agree to a per square foot price. But the problem is, this property is only 1/3 of an acre. Okay, so I'm gonna want more for this because there's a building on it,
and
or
it's,
he could sell this for next to nothing because there's nothing on it. So then you run into those kind of discussions.
well, yeah, because you've got frontage and he doesn't too. But what I'm looking at is, okay, I'm gonna have a discussion with John on this another time, so we're not taking more time, because I got some things.
Or sell the whole thing to a developer that says, hey, look, I'll save this building, I'll knock this one down, because that's been discussed before too. With some previous administrations is, maybe we'll keep this, we'll take this corner building, we'll knock it out, we'll do this. And
I'm guessing Kurt's, Pizza Man, not Pizza Man, Pizza, whatever, the Pizza Cafe, whatever that is. And maybe you guys aren't interested in selling. So I'm not so sure we want to get a great big guy.
you said I wasn't interested? in selling?
Yeah, maybe you're not, you would be?
Sure.
If the price is right.
Well, exactly.
Everything's for sale. JD, you had your hand up.
So I just wanted to mention, part of what Scott submitted for a consultant on the area was to, let's see if there's some design changes or some beautification that can happen in these properties. Of course, there would have to be a lot of participation across so many different businesses, so that will be challenging for sure. But one thing that has been brought to our attention recently that just hasn't been talked about until recent years is that Coldwater Creek runs right by your building. So right by it's 1900, it's basically piped underneath there, and then it goes over to Dan Nixon's property under there.
It is, it
Yeah.
diagonals across. The piping is probably up from there to there, and it opens up over here and it opens up. over there.
So that's a part of what Scott Hess is submitting for, is a consultant that can, figure out, does it make sense? Is it possible to daylight that creek? Is it possible to make it look beautiful going through that area? So there's a lot more to it than just the economic piece to it. There is, possibilities to make a natural waterway potentially. I mean, that is dreaming big for
And
sure.
that's what I'm thinking, and that's why I thought, there's a lot to this that we're not even seeing here, and that was one of them, because that's one of the things I talked to Evan here a while back too. Let's see what it's gonna, but that's got a whole bunch of cans of worms in it. Not that I'm gonna give up, I think we need to do
I'll
something.
take you back quite a few years, maybe 3 or 4 mayors way back. That was brought up that, hey, look, let's do something out there, the property owners together. One idea that this particular mayor had was break up the parking lot, right? Because big expensive asphalt.
That's what I'm talking
Okay,
about.
break up the parking lot with
Right.
green areas. He didn't talk about opening the creek, but green areas, trees, some grass, curbing. Well, what was brought up was, okay, that's fine, but we've got 2 problems. We were in a drought year. What do we do about water? Mayor said, no problem, we have plenty of water. Well, that's crazy because I keep hearing on the news, we have a drought, but okay, we have plenty of water. Then the next, what does that do to our snow plowing? Because snowplow guys hate curbs, they hate all this weird stuff, so that's another problem. Well, that went by the wayside. Now, with a mayor a little closer to a few years ago, said, well, hey, this would be great, they got I think they took a little bit of RDA money and got some architectural drawings of facades and different facades, what they would cost, different plans of how the whole area would look, taking this building out, doing this, doing that, and opening up that creek, maybe having a trail that runs through. And that's a great idea, but once you open up that creek, what do you do to people driving through there unless you've got some bridges? Because if you'll slice that pretty much in half on a diagonal, you got 2 triangles now, but people need to get from one side to the
Yeah,
other.
I'm not so sure as I thought it through, and I've got a couple of plans that I got from Evan. I'm not saying you could daylight that whole thing through the whole parking lot.
Probably not.
If we, for instance, got an apartment complex in the back northeast corner, open it there to go through maybe the middle of that,
Sure.
wouldn't that be nice? And then if we can add a restaurant or at least something, bring it out again, part of it there, but you're right, that,
Or an island,
yeah,
that you could drive around, but it opens up green areas, some water that goes back into a culvert,
yeah.
way it goes.
Okay, well, this is real good, because that's one of the things that I want to see what we can do, so.
Okay.
It's not gonna be easy, though. Looks like I've covered about everything I've got written down I wanted to talk about tonight. The discussion's been great. Appreciate everybody's input. Any other thing, JD, you can think of that maybe was left open a little bit on last meetings? I know the last meeting we had, not we, but that was held, when Brandon was going to do his deal, that it wasn't, not very many people were there. Is there anything we need to address maybe that?
The only other thing I can think of that's kind of pending and looming is, John Call was helping me, with the city sign that's going to be at Cooperstown.
Yep.
And so, I don't know, I think, John, I believe you were looking at additional quotes on that. Is there a status update on that?
We had a meeting of the day, John and I did.
Okay.
And he's gonna have it rebid on part of it.
Cool.
We kind of made some decisions on maybe what signs ought to be used, so we're gonna get that scaled down a little bit.
Okay.
So, yeah, but thank you for that.
Okay, yeah, that was one thing that was looming, and then, I just wanted to make sure that we thank, Brian Barker and, Blake Severing for being a part of the committee for quite a while, and, their involvement with things.
Mayor, could you do that on the next council meeting?
Acknowledge their
Yeah, their help.
service.
And do you want me to come and do that, or
They're surely welcome anytime.
I think I'll do that.
They
I'll
love
come.
citizens, except we're on Zoom only right now.
And you'll already be there, so maybe the two of us could, yeah, let's do
Terry, I
that.
think there's one assignment though we're skipping over.
What
I'm
is
still
it?
coming back to this marketing deal. Who's gonna take that assignment on? Because I think, there's a lot of things you're talking about tonight that can be tied into that.
In what sense, I guess, is marketing's a pretty big animal, and so I'd like to know, like, are we talking about the social media aspects of it, like with the Facebook page and that kind of stuff? Are we talking about marketing in general to, what aspects are you looking for volunteers?
I think Brian Crowd talked about, what's gonna attract people to our city, Ogden used aerospace, right, and the ski industry to attract people. We're talking about trails. If that's really something this group would like to recommend to the council, is that we try to tie in our business development with that. So I think, Cody, it'd be, pretty widespread. You do it, with the businesses, get their involvement. We talked about the bike race. We talked about how do we tie these things together? What do we think is going to attract people to North Ogden?
Another way to say it's a brand, like. what
Yeah,
is
branding,
North
that's
Ogden?
what-
Branding is what we were
Yeah.
talking about. Really, what is our brand, and what would people know North Ogden for that would be attractive to bring in folks in?
And create the destination that we've talked about, right? Like.
Yeah.
Pass through. Like, we want other people's sales tax, not just our citizens, but what's gonna bring others in here to spend money in North Ogden, to create the destination that people come to.
And that's why we kind of focused on the trails and the mountains and some of those things, because, other cities have a lot better access to the freeway, and you got to come in to North Ogden from the freeway. So, but there's only one way through the mountains, to the trail systems, to some of those great parks we have is, you got to go through North Ogden to get there. Was kind of just one of the ideas we were bouncing around.
And there's a whole nother element too, right? Like, there is such a huge demand for that right now, like, to be able to capitalize on that in a big way. Like, the outdoor industry is on fire right now. And we have something special here that we haven't tapped into yet.
Well, I would just say that Ogden has already tapped into the image of being an outdoor mecca. So, I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibilities to kind of latch onto that same concept. Because
Yeah, piggyback. that.
Ogden started getting all these big brands such as Solomon, Amer Sports, and Envy. All these big outdoor names started coming to Ogden because it started to be known that you can go out your back door and be on a bike trail in 5 minutes. So I think that that's potentially where this is going, is that is kind of our identity, is an outdoor destination. Whenever I talk to people in my job and they say, oh, where do you live? Oh, Utah. Oh, beautiful. You guys have biking and you have skiing. I've been there. I've done this. And so Utah's already known for that. We're already known as an outdoor destination, but North Ogden can just piggyback off of that and just make it more our identity. I know a lot of friends and family that they already know it as that, but it's branding it to others and letting them know that that's what we're all about.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, Dave.
How about something along the lines, North Ogden wants you to stay out. There was small print, outdoors biking, hiking, walking.
That's kind of a fun concept, really.
I like the idea of the signs. I think that's a really good idea. Like the signage that they've put in Ogden. So it's a different type of sign. It's branded just for showing you where the activities are, the outlets, you know, things to do. It's not just like a road sign. We can take on something like that and have it with our city logo and, or however you want to do it. But I think that would make it, that would lead people to the trails. And then they feel more apt to, oh, okay, well, if you turn right here, that's by, you know, Lee's or whatever, or by Smith's or by North Ogden Plaza, then you head up this road. I think it would be a win-win for everybody if we did the signage that you talked about. I think that's a really good idea. I think we need to have like a map that shows where all the trailheads are to make it easy for everybody to access them. So you don't have to try and figure out where to get that. I think the city ought to have a map that shows how to get to it from different places.
That's really good. So earlier, I asked for the Cody, was it Brian, were you gonna head up that other subcommittee we talked about earlier?
Yeah, I said I'd participate with the mountain bike group. Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Is that an outside group that's coming in to do that? I understand, it's not a city created event.
Is that our Parks and Rec, like the road races they've done in the past?
That's a good question,
It's,
John, you know?
it's the ramp, or not the ramp, the Arts Guild. So it's a
Oh.
city committee.
Huh.
And they're kind of trying to create new activities, new ideas, and they're the ones who want to sponsor and put it together.
So it could become an annual event,
Right.
like Ogden's Marathon.
Right.
Is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
What happened to our half marathon?
We had very low participation.
That's because it was impossible.
Yeah. Yes, it was a death march.
It was.
Was it all uphill or
It
what?
was. It was 13 miles. It was start and finish in the same place, and it was uphill the whole way.
And then we're back to-
It was.
Well, that's North Ogden.
And I run.
So what if, Cody, you and Brian head up the one we talked about earlier on the bicycle thing? And Brandon, how about if we get you and Janice to work on this branding thing?
I'm all for it.
Janice, would that be okay with you?
Yeah,
I'm volunteering you.
okay. That sounds good.
You sound like the most creative. Now, I'm speaking because I am not creative. So you guys, that sounds like it'd be good. If you need some help, just let me know.
Well, and I mean, I was talking with John, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I think we can use some of that RDA money to actually get some outside experts, right, like that can help us as well. And I think I would say that that is money really, really well spent, because yeah, we've got a lot of skilled people here, but it's not necessarily our day jobs. And so to take, you know, the ambition that we have, the skill that we have, and have an expert point us in the right direction, I sincerely think this like could be something special, right? Like, and we don't even necessarily need to copycat Ogden. Like, we can find our own mark in the world, and that's what an expert's going to help us do, right? Like, they're going to ask us questions, they're going to survey our citizens, right? Like, the citizens are going to have a lot of ideas, and they're going to be able to put a twist on it that's all our own, right? Like, and that then we can then take and just absolutely use for everything that we do, right? Like how we spend our money in the future, like what are our priorities as far as the tax revenue and how that's spent, like, you know, what businesses do we attract? Like, I can go on and on and on. Why, once we know our why, like why we exist and what we're trying to accomplish, everything else will fall into place, and we'll have an angle to create that.
I like that.
So.
So the only modifier is the money's there, the council has to approve it. So if this group can put together the request for the council to review,
So
that's.
that'll be, you and Janice can work on that.
on it.
And let's do it, see if we can do it for the next meeting,
So
for once a quarter.
do you mean that the plan to present to the council as far as how that money is spent, or?
Well,
I think we
I don't know
need
if
to
we
decide
can
what the
do
branding
that
is
fast.
first.
What's that?
We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. I think the council would need to approve
Yeah,
the branding before we get going down the,
yeah, your deal will be right now to see, to bring up some ideas, how the best way, maybe who, the branding, and then from
Yeah.
there.
I think what maybe he was requesting, just to try and add clarity here, was that maybe we get some expertise in the branding aspect and then how to brand. Is that kind of what the initial request was?
Yes.
What do
Yeah.
we need to do that, John? To see if we.
So I think getting an understanding of what it would cost, then seeing if the council's okay with that expense, and then if they are, then it would go out and we could spend the money, or you could spend the money.
Okay. So what would be our next step then to find, how would we find out what it would cost?
Probably just,
Quotes.
yeah, get some quotes from a few companies and probably talk about the scope of what you think, and then this group would look at the quotes and the scope and decide if that's what you want to present to the council.
Okay,
And I have been a part of that in my career, so I
Yeah.
have some understanding of that.
okay. If you'll work with Denise on that, and I'll make you the kind of the little subcommittee chairman, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And head that up, and well, this is some good things, for a long time, it seemed like the EDC was working on park benches and signs and stuff, and I'm thinking, this is a nice move forward, I think, to get to better our city. We're in a bad need of getting business here, and to get business here, we need more people coming. And so that's what this is, looks like it's generating. And gosh, it's nice to be surrounded by people that are creative, because I'm not very creative. So, good. Well, that's about all I wanted to address tonight. I mean, in fact, there's a little bit more than I could think of, so this is real good. Any other things that you can see we need to talk about on past items?
So one thing you mentioned, this is on the city website. It's not up to date to the minute, but this has businesses by categories. You can tell the categories are a little weird, but in theory, every business in the city should be on this page. And it's just under business licenses on the city website.
Oh, good, okay,
So there is that resource that's currently out there.
perfect, thank
So-
you. Under business, okay, good.
And it's at the very bottom, local businesses in my community. And we've highlighted it a few times. But it sounds like we should try and make sure we're highlighting it more often for folks.
Okay, well, is there any public comments?
Let me pull up the attendees. No raised hands at this moment.
Okay. So do we have any other staff that's on Zoom with us?
Just Scott.
Okay. Scott, do you have anything more to add or any comments?
Nope, just thanks. And this was a great conversation to listen in on.
Okay, thank you. John, anything from you?
I know this doesn't relate to this group, although in some ways it does, because it's an activity that comes into the city. The Polar Plunge, which was scheduled for this Saturday, is delayed for COVID reasons. Special Olympics is pushing it back a month. So it'll be warmer. So Mayor, I think you might be on the fence now if it's just a little warmer, right?
it all depends on what you define being on the fence means.
You're on the other side of the fence from the pool.
Yeah, and it looks really high for me to get over.
So anyways, that will be at doing that, but that's again, one of those groups that's an outside group that is doing something fun in the city that's growing every year. It's not a huge growth, but it's been a fun activity. So, but that's all I have other than that.
Okay. Mayor?
I would just say that this group ought to be aware of all activities of a significant nature that are taking place in the city in case there's a chance to tie businesses into that. For instance, as we develop what our activities are gonna be on Mondays, we're looking at a change in that from what it's been. It hasn't really been successful, so we're gonna look at different things, but there's people that come in to our city from outside. How do we get them to be part of that destination we're seeking? So I would just add that. And then I think Scott and Brian, we're gonna stay on after John
Okay,
for a little discussion, Brian Crowell, and about some things irrelevant to this committee, so.
Okay,
But thanks for your service. Thanks for willing to help. And we're gonna put Councilmember Dalpaz right to work. He's committed to have all the commercial properties developed in the city during his term, so we're anxious.
I just want to comment on that, the city Christmas festival lights and the hunt activity. I was able to be part of that. That was really amazing.
that was out of the park.
And the number of people who come in out of town also to be in that, to view it, to do that. I thought that was a really good event. I wanted to give kudos to Nick and whoever else was involved with that.
Well, I'm also gonna mention, it looks like Cherry Days is gonna be helped again with just some part of the public this year, right, Mayor?
Yes.
That's a good showcase to bring people into the city to see what we have. I happened to be very involved in that last summer, and it almost makes me cry thinking about some of the people that were here that were, there was a family from West Valley that heard about something at Cherry Days and were here, and I sat down and started talking to them, and they said, this is one of the neatest things. We go to things all the time. We try to find things, and this is a neat one. And so I think it's gonna be better again this year. Again, maybe it doesn't fall into the EDC. However, by bringing more and more people here, and if we've got some stuff to say, hey, look what we've got, look what we're doing, all good. So I'm excited about this year. I think it's gonna be a good one for growth and for the residents of the city. So. Okay, so again, I'll echo the mayor. Thanks for all the participation. Appreciate everybody coming. Looks like we had about everybody here tonight, so that's good. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, adjourn.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thanks, Denise. Okay, well, we'll be adjourned until, oh, shoot, next quarter. I'll be sending out the invitation again. Is it okay? What I did this time is I sent out a text to the phone, your phone, and then also an email. Do we need to do more than that?
I don't think.
Email's great.
That was fine.
2 weeks notice is
Okay, thank you all.